Now, ladies and gentlemen, the best budget and cheap knives for Counter-Strike Global Offensive for $400 and under. Now, this video was actually a mistake on my part. As you can see, the last video we did for this was $200. We're supposed to go $300, and of course, we went to $400 over $300. So next video for this specific series for the best knives is going to be $300. These knives specifically in this video are going to range from $340 all the way to $400. And I'm going to say right now, the knives you can pick from this one versus the $200, obviously skipping $200 is a very big difference. You're going to have a lot more options with the knives you can choose, like the skeletons, karambits, the talons, the M9s, the Ursuses, and the skeleton knives, of course, and of course a bayonet. And with those, they're all going to be pretty good looking skins, I would say. And these are also going to be based off of buff prices, which if you can't use buff, I have multiple videos on that. You could check out today's video sponsor, Skinport. A Skinport is an easy, fast, reliable buying and selling marketplace for Counter-Strike Global Offensive skins where you can sell your skins for cash, ladies and gentlemen. If you sell anything over $1,000, it's only a 6% sales fee. And specifically for these knives, you can find them up to 30% off Steam market price. If you guys want to help out the channel, check the link down in the description below. And people are probably going to wonder in the comments right before we start, why are you using cheap knives in the title and the thumbnail? Well, these are the best cheap knives in this category specifically. Best for your bang for your buck type of thing. All right, so the first knife here is going to be the Karambit Ultraviolet minimal wear for $395. Of course, the Ultraviolet is a pretty good looking skin, especially with these Pandora box gloves. Of course, you can find a field tested one in a very low float, but it's just a lot harder to find, and it's also going to be harder to resell for later down the line. So minimal wear for this is going to have minimal scratches, of course. Even the play side and the inspection side, when you flip it around, does look very, very nice. And I think it's just a really well-rounded option, especially for people who just want a good-looking karambit for a decent price. Now, to diversify the item pick here, this is going to be the bayonet autotronic up here next. Minimal wear for $386, so a little less than the karambit, but for this one, I mean, you can pick up a field tested one. You can even pick up a well-worn, maybe lower float autotronic for the bayonet specifically. Now, the autotronic and other type of skins like this in the game, what happens with the wear and the float with these things, so instead of it being really, really scratched or heavily damaged and battle scarred, it's going to have a lot less lighting to it. So it's going to be a lot less shiny. So the silver part and the, I guess you could say, chrome part on that is going to be pretty shiny, it being minimal wear here. And especially for $386, you are going to be paying mostly for that chrome finish and that sort of background. Now up next, I would say the budget version of the Karambit, not my favorite skin in the game, but this is the Talon Slaughter. So the Talon knife is a knife that I have not really ever enjoyed, but it's kind of a budget version for a Karambit. Has the same animation when you flip it and spin it around in your hand, but the pull-in animation obviously is a little different. Now the only thing holding me back on this knife specifically of buying one of these things is mostly because of the handle, and for $397 you can pick up, maybe for an extra $50 or $60 more, the exact same knife for the Karambit personally, and I just think that's a lot better. But it being factory new for a Slaughter is also pretty good, so you have to weigh your pros and cons with that, if you like the pull-in animation, if you don't. Now, up next is the Bayonet Slaughter, factory new, of course, for $384. Anything bayonet besides the autotronic, and I would say maybe the Crimson Web, you pretty much have to get these things factory new, because the bayonet is always notorious for having a non-factory new condition of an item on the bayonet really, really scratched, and it's always the sides being really, really scratched, and it just has the middle part not being scratched. It just looks absolutely horrible. You take a look at the Knight, the Ultraviolet, the Slaughter, and anything under factory new just looks absolutely horrible. And there are even some factory new ones that have a really high float. They look absolutely garbage. But for $384, if you like the Slaughters and you want to collect them, this ain't the worst pickup in the world either. But you also have to relate this to the Bayonet Autotronic for an extra $10. I mean, or an extra $2. So this is a very good pickup compared to that, in my opinion. But that's, I think, coming down to personal preference, and if you will fall on the nostalgia factor of having a Slaughter because it's really, really old. Now, next up is the Karambit Knight, of course, for $386. So once again, another knife that's the exact same price as the past two. This in minimal wear looks very, very good. It looks very, very clean. A lot of these knives, especially on the Karambit, it's going to have a little corner where it's a little scratched, but I mean, most people aren't going to care, and especially for this price range, you're not really going to be wanting to collect anything at this point in time, in my opinion anyway. And I would say for not that much more, you get a Karambit Vanilla, but I mean, most people are going to want to go with this because it's a lot cheaper and it looks almost the exact same. But this is not my favorite knife. For $386, it's not that bad. Next up on our list is the last Karambit on this list, and that's going to conclude the Karambits for today's video. Now, This is going to be a Brightwater factory new for 378 bucks, so a little less expensive than the past previous knives we talked about. And the cool thing about the Brightwater obviously goes with a couple other skins in the game that have Brightwater effects, and this skin specifically is a hit or miss. Some people love this, some people hate it. It goes really well with the sports gloves amphibiouses, battle scored, or factory new. There's some other skins in the game that go really well with this, but overall it's a pretty good budget karambit, especially you're getting it in factory new. So I feel like this is a skin you're either going to love it or you're absolutely going to hate it. Next up on our list is the Skeleton Knife Blue Steel minimal wear for 378 bucks. Now, the only problem I have with the Blue Steel in CS is the factory new, the minimal wear, and battle scarred and well worn and field tested kind of all feel and look the same sometimes. Obviously, it could be a little darker or a little lighter for the blue and the steel specifically on the Blue Steel knives, depending on the wear and the float, of course. Minimal wear, you're going to have it being a lot lighter, which is kind of cool, and this is the closest thing you'll probably get to a vanilla version of this knife, and not for that much more you can get a vanilla version. But for a budget, kind of like the Butterfly, always for a long time people always kind of went to the Blue Steel knives rather than the vanilla, because it's the closest thing that looks towards the vanilla, but also has like its own skin towards it. This might be your thing, it might not be your thing, but if you want a budget skeleton and budget knife in general, this would definitely be it. Now, I would say the most underrated knife on this list is up next here, and one of the best looking knives, in fact, on this list. It's actually made me consider maybe if I want to pick up this specifically for my inventory. Now, the Huntsman Lore factory new for 380 bucks. I think this looks absolutely beautiful. One of the best looking knives in all of CS. I think these new additions with the RIPTIDE knives, and recently the past years on the Spectrum knives with the Spectrum cases coming out with the new finishes on the newer knives, look absolutely amazing, and even the older ones in general, like this specifically. This is 380 bucks, so it's a little bit heftier of a price tag than some of the other ones we've discussed in today's video, but I gotta give it to him, man. It looks absolutely amazing, and the pulling animation is the only thing I would say holding this knife back from being one of the best ones in the game. Obviously, it has the same pulling animation as the gut knife, and I would say the majority of people don't necessarily like the gut knife, and neither do I. But the blade itself and the pulling animation, if you can get past that, it's a very good looking knife. Especially this goes well with a lot of different gloves in CS. Now, our second last option up here is the M9 Slaughter field tested for 356 bucks. Now, the field tested for the Slaughter, especially for the M9, is really going to depend on the float and wear. If you can find a really good one and field tested for $360 specifically, in field tested, you can get a really good looking one closer to minimum wear and factory new. That is a really good possibility. I've had one before and used to have one back in the day that was field tested. It almost looked factory new. They are a little more rare to come by now since these knives aren't the main knives in CS anymore, but definitely is possible if you keep your eyes out for them on CS deals, Bitskins, Skinport, Buff, stuff like that. But 356 bucks, it's a really good option if you want to get an M9 that's pretty cheap, that looks pretty good, and of course it's the only M9 I think we've discussed in the past couple videos. Now, our last option up here is the Ursus Fade minimal wear for 357 bucks. Now, the factory new version is a little more expensive, kind of the reason I didn't really suggest it. Factory new, it doesn't look that much better either than minimal wear. Probably it's just going to be a little better for resale value and stonk option for the future. Now, for 357 bucks, this is a pretty good way to get a newer knife in CS, especially with that fade finish. This looks absolutely amazing. I think this and the survival knife are one of the most, or maybe some of the most underrated knives inside of CS. I was always one to hate the newer knives in Counter-Strike. I still don't really like the Talon. It's not really pulling me in the same way the Ursus, and especially the survival knife has really pulled me in to really like those knives specifically in Counter-Strike. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think of this list specifically? Do you think it's pretty good, especially for that under $400 range? And do you guys like the newer knives in CS? Do you guys like the Talon knives? Do you guys like the Ursus survivals, the stilettos, the Navajas? Do you guys like those type of knives? Because I feel like they're still not that accepted. Obviously, the Nomad is exploding up in price, and you know, for so long people didn't like the Nomad knife, and it's obviously because of Modesty and of course Simple has the Simple effect, which I might be doing a shorts channel or a short video on this channel in the next upcoming couple days talking about the Nomad knife, because that thing, I mean, it never really is a guaranteed thing. It's more so of just hype and the demand for it at the time because everyone's talking about it. I still don't believe it's that good of a knife in the game. Have a good day, guys. Stay positive, stay sexy. Make sure you guys check out Skinport if you can't use Buff, if you're trying to pick up any of these knives or pick up some items or sell your items specifically. Stay positive, stay sexy.